Hello everyone and welcome back to Germanic Science. In this tutorial we're diving into an interesting topic in anatomy, which is the nerve supply of the abdomen. We're simply going to start by understanding the basics. Notice that the abdomen is packed with important organs like the stomach, intestine, liver and then the kidney. But how do these organs receive signals in order for them to function? And that is where the nerves come in. Notice that the abdomen basically gets its nerve supply from two major sources, which is the somatic, also known as the voluntary, and here we have the autonomic, which is involuntary. The somatic basically controls the muscles and the skin of the abdominal wall, while the autonomic nerve basically controls the internal organ without even you thinking about them. To make things more clearer, let's first talk about the somatic nerve, which is the one we can control. And notice that this nerve comes from the spinal cord and supplies the abdominal muscles and then the skin. And here we have some major key players. And these key players, you can also call them the TSI. The first one is the thoraco-abdominal nerve, which basically starts from the thoracic vertebrae 7 to T11. And here we have the subcostal nerve, which starts from T12. And the last but not the least, which is the eye, which is iliohypogastric and ilioinguinal nerve. To make things ridiculously easy, notice that this TS, which is the thoraco-abdominal nerve and subcostal nerve, one of them runs between the ribs and one runs under the ribs. So let's start with the first one, which is the thoraco-abdominal nerve, which basically starts from T7 to T11. And notice that this nerve runs between the ribs and controls the abdominal wall. This particularly, which is between the ribs, and it supplies the abdominal wall. What about the next one, which is the subcostal? The subcostal basically runs under the ribs and supply the lower abdomen. Under the ribs and supply the lower abdomen. And the last but not the least, which is the iliohypogastric and ilioinguinal. What this does, they simply control the lower abdominal muscles and the skin near the groin. Now let's move into the autonomic, which we call the involuntary. And notice that this comes in two forms, which is the sympathetic nerves and then the parasympathetic. And notice that the sympathetic, that is what we call the fight or flight, and the parasympathetic, which is what we call the rest and digest. Starting with the sympathetic nerve, notice that this prepares your body for action. So if you are stressed, it slows down digestion and tightens up your blood vessels. And the main one in this case, we have the greater splanchnic nerve, the lesser splanchnic nerve, and the least splanchnic nerve. And they simply connect the abdominal organs through nerves network. Looking at the cool guy, which is the parasympathetic nerve, also known as the rest and digest. So what it does, it simply helps our body to relax and improve digestion. And it also comes in two main forms, which is we have the vagus nerve, also known as the cranial nerve 10, and we have the pelvic splanchnic nerve, which basically start from S2 to S4. The vagus nerve, or you can also call it vagal nerve or the cranial nerve 10, basically this is the main nerve for the parasympathetic nervous system that escape the skull, pass through the jugular foramen, down to the clavicle, and it supplies the abdominal cavities. So I have this particular video with the title The Mechanism of Coughing, which we talk about few things like concerning the function of the vagal nerve. So where you will see when we have a detection of pollutant or irritant in the airways, so the chemo and the mechanoreceptors will get activated, where they will send a signal to the vagus nerve, specifically vagus ambiguus. So I'm going to drop the link down below in the description section. Maybe you can have interest in watching it. So To make things easier, we said the vagus nerve, which is the cranial nerve, what it does, it simply controls most of your digestive organ. And here we have the splanchnic nerve, which starts from the sacral vertebrae S2 to S4, and this nerve takes care of the lower intestine, like the bladder and the reproductive organs. So next thing we're going to be looking at is the nerve network, or we can call it the flexus in the abdomen. To make things even cooler, this nerve form what we call the flexus, which is a network of nerves. So, and notice that these are like control centers that direct the nerve signal to the right places. So the main ones which we have in this case, let's start with the first one. This is what we call the celiac flexus. Celiac flexus. And the second one is superior mesenteric flexus. Superior mesenteric flexus. And here we have the next one, which is going to be the inferior mesenteric flexus. And this part and this part, here we call them the inferior and superior hypogastric flexus. Superior and the inferior hypogastric flexus. So now let's look at the functions. Notice that the celiac flexus, basically, which we call the solar flexus, it is simply control the SLI, S-L-I, which is nothing but the stomach, the liver, and then the intestine. And the superior mesenteric flexus, this simply take care of the small intestine and then the part of the large intestine. The superior mesenteric flexus basically take care of the small intestine and then part of the large intestine. And here we have the inferior mesenteric flexus, which supplies the lower intestine. This supplies the lower intestine. And here we have the superior and inferior mesenteric. Superior and inferior hypogastric flexus. What it does, it simply controls the bladder and then the reproductive tract. And this literally makes sense because it's downward here. And that is where we find the location of the bladder and then, let me write it for, and then the reproductive organs. So this is it for this problem. Let's take a very quick revision. In this case, what we basically talk about is the somatic nerve, the autonomic nerve, and then the flexus. And what we said the somatic nerve, they simply help to move the abdominal muscles and give sensation to the skin. And here we have the autonomic nerves, which simply control the digestion and the blood flow without thinking about it. The last but not the least, which is the abdominal flexus, which is the flexus, The flexus are basically nerves which is the center that help to direct this nerve signal to the right places. So this is it for this problem. Please, if you really find this one very helpful and you understand it, just do me a favor by subscribing to Gemnic Science. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Hello everyone and welcome back to Gemnic Science.